Hey guys, this is Robonzo of the Unstarving Musician. I have a small favor to ask of you. Please visit unstarvingmusician.com/resources to find out about all the ways that you can support this podcast and help me keep the lights on, so to speak. Many of those ways cost you zero, nothing, maybe a little time, but no money. So please check it out, unstarvingmusician.com/resources. Let's do the show. This is the Unstarving Musician podcast. I'm your host, Robonzo. The podcast features conversations with me, indie music artists, and industry professionals, and it's all intended to help other indie music artists be better at marketing, business, the creative process, and all the other things that empower us to do more of what we love. Make music. Welcome to another episode number 214 of the Unstarving Musician podcast. I am your host, of course, Robonzo. How are you today? Are you getting outdoors, getting an early morning bit of sunlight, the kind that keeps us happy? I started swimming this week. It's been a long time, and I don't know why, but it took a new pair of swimming goggles to get me back into the pool and out into the ocean. I needed it, too. I was feeling a little down earlier in the week, but exercise and sunshine does the trick for me just about every time. I'm recording this intro on Instagram. If you're interested, you can find me at Robonzo Drummer on the Insta. It's just to do a little fun, something a little fun for those who like to look at my funny morning hair. My wife says my hair looks good all the time. She's sweet that way. I don't know if that's true or not. Before I get to my guest, I want to tell you about some new music. It's something I want to start doing for former guests and kind of insiders of the podcast. So let me tell you about 4 new songs. One of them's an album, actually, by some great artists that I know through the podcast. So Eli Lev has a new single out called Dancin' on the Lawn. I'm going to put a DistroKid link there where you can find all the streaming links there. Eli's got an amazing voice. He's kind of in the folk genre, but you got to hear his voice. It's great. And Shannon Curtis, the house concert queen in my book, has a somewhat new album. Well, it's her 2021 album called 2020 101. Yeah, it's a bunch of numbers. It's kind of tough. I'll have to ask her about that. But I'm going to put a Bandcamp link to that album there. It's really good. I was trying to choose a song, and I'm like, I can't choose. I need to listen to it some more. But it's cool. I kind of dream of doing a drum track for one of her songs. I really dig her stuff. And then Lars Deutsch, who has been on the podcast, producer Lars Deutsch, he's also a musician. His latest work is a production of a track called Sidewinder by The Last Chaperones. This is, I guess it's kind of an alternative pop tune. I like it a lot. It's really good. I'm going to put a Ditto FM link that will give you a bunch of streaming links. And my good friend Tawanda, who I know through the Music Marketing Method program, we're like classmates. She has a new tune out called Emptiness. I think it just dropped on all streaming platforms today maybe, but very recently. And it is a cool tune. Tawanda's a really neat person. It's pretty likely I'm going to get her on the podcast one of these days if she'll accept the invitation. So, all right. So, hey, guys, thanks. Hey, my brother's there. What's up, Mario? Boss? Crossed out. Nice to see you on Instagram. I'm saying hi to people on Instagram. I'm sorry. I'm live streaming this, so for those of you who are like, what is he talking about? All right. So my guest is JJ Lovegrove, who I know from the Music Marketing Method program. She is a great songwriter. I know that her idol, one of them, is Kate Bush. She's also a huge fan of The Edge from U2. She's a keyboardist, though. She wishes, I think, a little bit that she could sing grunge, but she feels she would do it a disservice, so she doesn't do that. But she's got a really cool brand of music, and she is kind of cracking the codes of social media and playlists on the Spotify, which we talk about in this episode 214. And like I said, we're acquainted through Lynz Crichton's Music Marketing Method program. It's a school for indie musicians, if you will. I'm having a real good time there. So JJ and I talk about the revelations that she's had in Music Marketing Method, the beautiful connections one can make through conversation on social media. She used to view social as a very unpleasant place. We've all been there, right? But she's turned around. She's connecting with a lot of people there. And we also discuss her life of performing. She's been in music since she was a wee little girl. She's actually English. I'm not, as you know. I'm from Texas. Did you know that originally? Yeah, you probably did. If you've listened to this a few times, or if it's the first time, you probably didn't know that, and you could care less. But anyway, you will hear that JJ is from the UK, and she has a lovely British accent. We also talk about a time and some events that prompted her to leave music and why she returned, what she learned from that whole experience, the wonders of Spotify playlists. That's right, she has cracked the playlist code, and we talk about a whole lot more. I so enjoyed listening back to this conversation. She kind of endeared me to herself all over again. We had a really nice time. Lately I'm doing these things on Zoom, so I have video. I'm going to start putting more of that out. I think you guys would enjoy some of them, especially this one with JJ, because she has a very lovely background. She's just very charming. So, all right, enough of my rambling on. Here is me and JJ Lovegrove.
I'm fantastic.
Good. I'm glad to hear it.
I got a haircut just for our conversation today. No.
Oh.
I needed a haircut.
I got my roots done.
Very nice. Very nice.
Thank you.
We're just going to roll right into conversation here as I usually do. So I wanted to start off by asking or commenting anyway that we met, for people listening, we met through a course or a program called Music Marketing Method by Lynz, Crichton, who's been on this podcast maybe 3 times. I'm not sure. It's been really fun. It was really fun for me to see her launch the course because she came onto the podcast in her early-ish days of building her audience. So I was watching, and then I'm like, oh, that makes sense now that she's doing this. But what has been your impression or experience with Music Marketing Method, just so that people can get an outside perspective from what little I've shared thus far on the podcast?
It's been so good. It's shown social media in a positive light, which I really needed to see at that time, because I haven't always felt that way. So it's been very good to know that there are steps that you can take, practical steps that can really start to build an audience, but also connections, genuine connections with people, which I kind of didn't think was possible in such a way, because social media can feel so faceless on the surface of things. So yeah, I've loved it, and it's been completely invaluable. And I don't know how I would have survived lockdown without having those connections, I think, genuinely at that time. Yeah.
So you had, obviously you had some inner circle friends and maybe some fans, a number of fans as well, prior to getting in Music Marketing Method. But are you saying that a lot of new ones have come up as a result, or just sort of kind of helped you strengthen ones that you have and make new ones?
I'm very much a live focused performer, so my interactions have always been live, and that feeling in the room and connecting with people in a physical sense rather than on a sort of social platform context. And a job that I did previously was as a social media marketing manager for a big brand, so I became a little bit jaded about the sort of what social media is and how it can be this sort of it can be a bit of a marketplace for bad people, bad ideas, bad viewpoints. And I kind of had that hat on it coming in and using it as a music standpoint. Whereas I've realized now that there are genuine connections and genuine people out there that have got a love for music all over the world that connect through these things. And it's not just a bad place. It can be for good too.
Yeah, it's funny. I probably saw Facebook that way in particular. You know, we talk about these networks, and especially Twitter, which we are very focused on, at least in the beginning in the Music Marketing Method group. But I viewed Facebook was kind of the cesspool of bad things for me initially. But then I'd kind of learned to filter out things I just did not want to see. Now, consequently, I really have not spent a lot of time on my personal page, and probably because of the culmination of all the weirdness. But I've always heard, even doubly so, of Twitter. But my Twitter experience, for the most part, in re-engaging with it because of Music Marketing Method, it's very easy to filter for exactly what you just like to focus on, you know. I occasionally, you know, will look, I like their Twitter's kind of news things that they post. But if I try to get news from people who say things or share things, well, say things they would never say to your face, or just share, you know, weird stuff that people are sharing, not so much. But yeah, what's the weirdest or the most unusual place, I should say, that someone lives who you've connected with since we started the class?
Apart from you?
Hey, that's a good one, right?
I know.
So wait, pause there for a second. Are you in Nottingham, England?
I am,
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, yeah. And for anyone who's hearing this for the first time, I'm in Panama in Central America, so that was fair. Okay, besides me.
I get some lovely interactions at bizarre times of night. Just for example, sort of 2 nights ago, I'm a bit of a night owl, and so at like sort of 2 o'clock in the morning, I get a DM tweet saying, "What's the future like?" I'm from Alaska, and I love that, and I love it. And I'm like, actually, it's pretty much the same, but let me know if I can go back and make any undoings of mistakes. That's a really good like loophole. But it's just that kind of interaction that people feel that I guess I've always deep down really wanted a pen friend, or I've always been that kind of person that's, you know, in my past, I've written to presidents and ambassadors and Amnesty International, hoping I can make a difference. And I've never really had the time to see it through. But Twitter's like my pen friend with people without the commitment. I can just sort of very quickly message people from around the world without posting it, without a stamp. And I get people sort of saying, hello, I'm looking at a lake in, you know, Denmark. And it makes me feel very depressed just looking at my garden in Nottingham that's very grey. But it's lovely. And I love all of those interactions. So yeah, maybe Alaska. You in Alaska, I would say.
I was going to say, and I don't have location verification on this person, but there is someone who's been writing me quite a bit from Baghdad. And then I have had a couple of people or a few people from Japan that I've corresponded with. One person who stays in regular touch with me. And then there's a woman in Paris that stays in regular touch with me. I don't know if she's Parisian or even French, though, quite honestly. I haven't asked yet. But yeah, and I've been lucky to a number of people from Latin America. I guess interestingly, they follow a lot of the same music that I do.
It's awesome though, isn't it? It's almost like when you bump into somebody at a gig and they say, oh, I've come all the way from, you know, and they insert a place that's miles away from where you're actually, you know, your gig is. They go, wow, you know, it's like that interaction, but on Twitter. I love it. I love those bits.
Yeah, it is great. And I haven't really yet so much, but it's been in the, I think I'm really close to doing it, other than maybe YouTube, but I think I'm close to doing it because I keep thinking of things that would make a lot of sense to do. But have you started branching into or back into some of the other platforms, you know, taking the things you're learning from Twitter that are just kind of seem universal, right? But
yeah, I have. And I do get, there is quite a bit of a backlash about Spotify, and I will post, there'll be posts about Spotify, and I will post things, and then on Twitter, I will get people sort of go, you know, how about a YouTube? You know, why don't you push your YouTube a little bit more for people who don't want to engage with Spotify? So I am aware that there are people who just won't touch that platform. So I do try to go into those other platforms as well. It's just I'm a very visual kind of person, and I don't like the idea of just being on YouTube with nothing to really watch or look at. I'd like to do, it's a kind of all or nothing thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd really like some proper visuals to look at, but it's hard to do everything, isn't it?
Yeah, sure. I I don't know if you're already doing this, but I have been directing people to my website, but where they can hear my music. But on the current release, I have links to some of the more popular services, but that the songs are pretty much on most of them. But so I'll have a Spotify link, a YouTube link, Pandora, and iTunes, I think, to kind of help me address that, because I realize that too. You know, I get kind of Spotify on the brain and realized that people get their music in different ways, and that and this podcast is interesting. I think a lot of people will listen to it on YouTube because, like as someone said in one of our group sessions, everybody has YouTube or knows YouTube, and it's true. And podcasting is listening is still kind of weird to a lot of people. They don't really understand how to get it, and there's been this language about subscribing, so maybe people think you always have to pay for it, you know. So
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So you have a history musically of live performance, yes?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, since I've been music's, but it's since about 4 years old. It's all I've ever known. So yeah.
And that spans everything from cover bands to doing your own thing, and maybe a lot of unusual things in between.
Oh yeah, everything. yeah. I started. I got my first keyboard when I was 4, and I started when I was 4, and then very quickly sort of learnt that it was more of a by ear thing that I wanted to do, and I could pick things up by ear. My family were they're a big lover of music anyway in my family, so it was all around me. So yeah, I very quickly sort of made it into pubs and clubs and playing covers in pubs and clubs, and so therefore all my education has always been music orientated, and therefore my jobs have always been, what jobs can I get that will let me go on tour? And so it's shaped every single aspect of my whole life. So it's been I fit a lot in, I'll put it that way.
Yeah, and I just learned this earlier today. I was doing a little homework on you to figure out what to ask you about, and so I didn't really know this part about you. And I was looking at your YouTube channel. You have tons of live things that you did there. Well, I don't know if they were like live streaming, but you recorded a lot of performances, uploaded, maybe did some live stuff. A lot of really wonderful stuff. Got to watch you play keyboards. Hear your great voice. I really love your voice, by the way, if I haven't said that before.
Thank you. I'll take it again. Thank you.
Okay, let's bounce over to Spotify playlists, because it was one of the things that I thought this would be really fun to talk about for, well, the haters, the lovers, the people that do it because they feel like they have to. But maybe a couple of weeks ago, maybe a few weeks ago now, you had mentioned, I think it was in our group, but you'd mentioned this playlist, that maybe some playlists that you'd gotten on that were by other artists, and then you were then you contacted me and some other artists about getting on this one that you did. But I remember you saying, it must have been in one of our Q&A group sessions with the music marketing method folks, but I remember you saying it was a really interesting and surprising way to get something like this, to get on playlists and get in some new ears. Can you talk a little bit about that discovery and then how it's been going with the one that you started?
It's been a really lovely sort of upshot of the Twitter community and the connections that you make, is that if you go into these social media things and you are genuine about making connections and making those fans that you really want them to like your music, and they are like they're alive, they're like they're there in the audience, rather than how can I find a robot that can answer this person for me. You don't remember their names, you don't remember what their avatar looks like, but if you sort of see them on your profile, the big thing is you don't really know who they are. You don't know if they compile Spotify playlists. You don't know if they're a radio DJ. If they're a lover of music, they're a lover of music. And sort of this has been a surprising thing about sort of finding people that liked my music and then have compiled playlists. And some of them are huge, and I had no idea. And they're not people that you specifically target. You wouldn't, you get those submissions, those people who go, send your submissions to this playlist. It's not that kind of thing. It's a more organic thing, but it's more of an artist supporting other artists thing as well. And the upshot has been that I've all of a sudden that my Spotify is now being used more like a Google platform, and that I'm able to be found in a sea of, there are so many incredible artists out there, indie artists making brilliant music. So anybody that listens to any one of my songs once, I'm just so grateful for finding me in that mix. But then to get the kind of numbers that I've got recently by people sharing and putting into the playlist, it's been incredible. But it all stems from sort of making genuine connections and other artists saying this person's really good, and then they share your stuff and you share their stuff, and it, as you've said previously on other podcasts, it's about paying it forward as always, and about having those genuine connections with people, whether it's online or not, and that just kind of pays off. And also you pay it forward to other people. You tell other people about, you know, other artists for their playlists, and I'm sure they're getting the same kind of numbers too. But yeah, that it's a really good upshot of just having nice chat with people.
And how did it, what was the beginning of this particular playlist ecosystem for you? What did someone approach you, tell you about their playlist, and you kind of like you did with me when you were spreading the word around and you submitted a song? Is that how it started?
I think the funny thing is with that sort of playlist situation is it's word of mouth, and it kind of builds. So you may I do a bit of both. I organically reach out to sort of maybe 10, 15 playlists and radio stations that I know that have been supporters of me in the past, that have liked my stuff, and I will send them the stuff. But I will get picked up then by other playlists that have seen me being played on another person's playlist, and they go, oh, if they're playing them, then I'll play them. And the particular playlist that got me the most recently, that has been the most lift in listeners, I didn't submit to, and I have no idea how. I think they even purchased my music off of Bandcamp, and then put it on their playlist on Spotify. So it's like a double whammy, and it's been tenfold. So yeah, it's more of a, well, if they're playing them and we watch them as a fellow playlist to, you know, people to watch, then we should be playing them. And it's that, and I do think that in the UK we do have this BBC introducing thing too. And I think that if you get on the BBC introducing thing, that does help, because it's such a recognizable name, and it's sort of a bit of a nod of maybe they're to, you know, ones to watch, and we'd like to catch them on the way up rather than try and get them, which is a lovely thing, and I hope they're right. But it's like a more of organic growth really, and I have no idea whether they got it from, I didn't approach them.
So it's almost hard to pinpoint certain inflection points. Sorry to use that word twice, but it's hard to identify specific inflection points because it was so organic, it sounds like.
But I think that's even more beautiful about the way that you connect with people. Is because you never know where that connection is going to lead to. I think that makes it more of a genuine thing of just being nice to people and going, I really hope that everybody likes this track, or it's not sort of a vanity project. Whoever, I only hope you like it if you're a radio DJ, for example. I hope you like it if you're never going to buy anything from me and you've listened to it once. It's all the same to me, really. If you spent the time to listen to it, I treat everybody exactly the same, whether they're a DJ or, you know, whoever, really.
Because you never know.
No, that's right. You never know.
You never know. And then it seems that you've had a good focus on getting featured on radio, and I don't know if that's been a combination of terrestrial and internet, but can you describe how your approach to that has been, and am I also correct that it's been a helpful part of getting some exposure for you and making connections?
Yeah, it's a very strange thing. I'm in a collaboration project too with Minus Cube, and it's very tricky to explain, but it's almost like they're treated as two separate entities, and where some DJs will play one thing, they won't play another, like a solo project, for example. And then I may get BBC airplay for a particular track, but it does nothing on Spotify. So it's a very strange mix of the two that I'm sort of finding at the moment, where a track will be really successful on terrestrial aerial, sort of BBC radio, and get what should be success in what traditional sort of exposure. But then on Spotify it just doesn't get those numbers. So it's a mix of the two. In the UK we do have a submissions process where they listen to everything and they choose what they want to play, and I guess that's the same for the radio stations. But I think it's just if you know that people that you follow on Twitter that you like and they're making the same kind of music that you like are submitting to particular radio stations, then just follow their lead and say, hey, and be really genuine about it. Sort of, I see that you're a friend of, such and such. I really like their music too. I think we might be a good fit. I'd be really honoured if you listen to this particular new track and see what you think of it. And don't sort of ask about putting it on a playlist or listening and putting it on a radio station. Just see what they think. If it's a good fit, they'll add you. If they don't, then they won't. But again, it's an organic thing and a conversation, really, I think.
Yeah, well, thanks for sharing that. It's helpful. I sent a note to, I hope it's okay to call him Joe on here, but Minus Cube, the artist Minus Cube.
He'll be fine with Joe.
Today, yeah. While I was trolling around your stuff on the internet, and I mentioned that I had found out about him through you and your collaboration, and I listened. I'm pretty sure I have listened to it one point or another because of the introduction through you. His newest, something very new by him, I think, or newish. Some of his newer stuff, I should say. But today I went back and I was like, let me hear the first thing he put on Spotify, and I'm listening to it. And suddenly something you had said to the music marketing group, he has some regular fans that really don't like when you collaborate with him, and it's been vice versa true for you. And I was like, well, I get it now, because the he's like, at least what I heard, I'm like, no, he's, maybe comparatively kind of heavy and, alternative rock. So I could see it. But I do find the collaboration really interesting, and I like the newest one that you did, and I'm forgetting the title. Forgive me. Can you say it?
I'm Fine, or Autopilots.
Yes, that's the one I was thinking of. But okay, so you have the I'll Be Fine too. I love those, but yeah, I was like, it makes sense. And it was funny at the time when you were talking about it to the group.
The funny thing is with Joe as well is that he's made the music that I listen to. Like, yeah. I'm a huge grunge, Pearl Jam thingy fan, but I don't have that in me to make. I don't play guitar. I play keyboards. It's something that's slightly out of my reach, and I feel that I slightly ruin grunge with my vocal. But together we make something that's new that we're going to have to come up with a word for that hasn't got unge at the end, hopefully. that would be wrong.
Yeah, yes, and you must genreify yourselves. For someone who's not heard you before, I don't know if this is true for everyone who makes music, but you try to pull from specific influences and let that kind of come out in your music. But what influences would you say are there, or how would you describe your music?
It's always a tricky one, isn't it? Everybody struggles with.
What are you trying to do? That's a better question.
Yeah. What am I trying to do? God, I should ask that more often of myself. I guess deep down, I just want to be the Edge from U2.
Yeah, that's great.
I just want to make my keyboards a very twinkly guitar, sort of mirror ball sound, and for me to sort of, I've always aspired to that rock and roll escapism, that turning up to a gig that is a proper gig, your Pink Floyd's, your U2's, where they put on a proper show. And I know that is pretty much null and void these days, let alone with COVID, but before COVID. And I think that's the navigating point that I found with the whole music marketing method and live gigs, is that I understand that we need to connect with people, But my connecting with people has always been through the music live in that room at that time, through goosebumps or whatever effect I've chosen, and how to read that room and how to send them home, and for me to go home thinking I was in that room that night and we all felt what we felt. And that's a very different thing doing that over YouTube and Twitter. And I think it's that maintaining a mystery, but also letting people in and seeing your process and what you want to be, and through lyrics and things. So I have a lot of influences, and I know that big sort of theatrical thing isn't there anymore. But if I could try and do that on a record, I would be very happy. I think the nearest thing I can think of that I've listened to recently that I am blown away with are people like Wolf Alice and Another Sky, and anything. I mean, Kate Bush is my hero. She managed to have this ethereal quality and be almost untouchable, but be relatable. And I don't know if that kind of star exists now, if you can be that kind of person in music nowadays, but I will try.
Do you see, well, actually, let me save that question because I want to ask you something that I meant to ask, if it's okay to ask before we started, but worry not. If you don't want to talk about it, it's totally fine. And I probably shouldn't set it up like such a big deal, because I want to ask you something because I think it would be helpful to a lot of people that listen to the podcast. And I try to touch on things kind of like this. So I understand that you had some experience with treatment of female artists that were not exactly the best experience. And I would love to know if you want to talk about that in any way that you think might be helpful to listeners, male or female.
Yeah, that's fine.
And sorry for the huge setup. I made too big a deal of it.
I got me slightly worried. But no, yeah, obviously music's been a part of my life since I was very little, so therefore I went into it through my teenage years. I was in lots of bands, tribute bands and things growing up, and then went into another band and found ourselves with the promise of a very big record contract on our table. I was very lucky for the second album. We went out and recorded in New York at Quad Studios. So that was huge for us. And we spent sort of almost 2 weeks out there commuting and recording in New York. It was an absolute dream. And Def Jam, hate to name names, Def Jam had a letter on our table about signing us, and it was, we would sign you as long as your singer loses X amount of weight. And at the time, I was like a size 8 to 10, already starving myself, already trying to fit into this particular industry. And the same thing wasn't happening to my male band members. And obviously you sort of do what you need to do at the time, and you're just thankful for the breaks that you've been given. But then you sort of realize that you're shouldering a lot of not only the songwriting and the lyric writing. I wrote all the songs, I wrote the lyrics. But then you've got this other thing that you don't really have any kind of control over, which is your kind of basic DNA. And it was the thinnest I've ever been. I couldn't have tried any harder to fit in. If I can understand the Hollywood thing with how drugs become involved at this particular time with starlets and musicians, because it's just, there is nothing else you can do. There is, you can flog yourself at the gym, you can do band rehearsals, your body just reacts and your body just will not do it anymore. And as a result, I've kind of messed my whole system up forever. I've shot my thyroid, and my thyroid gland was completely kaput. I didn't know I had a hereditary heart condition as well, which obviously didn't help. So all of these things have led to like ramifications way down the line. I left the business for a very long time. I was very jaded. My drummer then, at the time we were in New York, left to be in the band that we were recording with, a very successful band who are still going today. and we toured with them, which is great, and it was such a lovely time. But I did leave the business for a very long time, very jaded and very kind of, it was a business I didn't really want to dip my toe back into because it was so painful, and it feels a very vulnerable thing to put yourself back out there again, even as little as taking your photo to put on the cover of something that will then be the cover of your EP or a cover of a single or something. Everything that you kind of overthink everything and think about the worst that might come back at you. But I'm in a much stronger place now, and I kind of came out of it thinking, I've done this since I was 4, and I won't let them take what I have, what I think is my gift that I've had since I was 4. I won't let them take that voice away. That is, like, I let them for a while, and that made me even more angry that I sort of let them make me quiet and let them. So I've got a lot more to say now in the very short sentences in my songs, but I'm learning, and I'm still raw and a bit vulnerable, but I'm getting there bit by bit. So.
Well, I imagine that's what your fans love about you, though.
If I only told people.
Well, I'm sure they'd love to hear it. Well, thank you for sharing that. And so, what was it? Just the frustration turned to anger that made you come back, or was there anything else that brought you to that decision?
I mean, I've always wanted, music's been, like I say, music's been my whole life. I've always wanted to be music. When I took a break from music, I went back to university and I did a degree and I got a first in design, and I went back and studied design album covers. I wanted to design. I know, who saw that coming? I mean, Spotify have ruined that for me. So yeah, I was very lucky, and I went on work experience with Andy Vella, who designs for The Cure. I went and did a course at Central St. Martin's with Vaughan Oliver, who does 4AD stuff and things with the Pixies. That visceral thing of having and holding an album cover, and something about taking that home with you and having that, and it might be your only friend. Like, who knows what's happened to you in your life that day, but you go to the shop, you buy this, you read the linear notes, you read the lyrics, all of a sudden somebody understands you, that whoever it was that made this thing, they just know you. And there was something about that visceral product and that thing that I think kind of makes me up today. But I went back and did that, and obviously album covers disappeared. And then I sort of realized that, hang on a minute, there are wedding singers out there. There are sort of people doing covers, like, and they're trying really hard to learn these things, to do these covers and do these gigs. I could do it. Somebody could tell me to play something, I could do it. Like, it's a gift I have, like it or loathe it. Like, I play by ear. So why aren't I using that? Why would I be earning less going and working in the shop? Or I mean, I used to work in record stores, and I got to give my passion away that way. And then record stores started closing, and I was made redundant 5 times. So it was like, so I just, it was like a sign of, like, you have this thing, you've been given it, why aren't you using it? Why are you letting everybody else do this when you could be doing this? So I dipped my toes in, and I've kind of not looked back since, and I'm adamant to kind of keep it up, I think.
That's great. Well, it sounds like you never really let it go. You wouldn't let it go until you were like, okay, what am I doing? You were able to look at what you were trying to do and what you really wanted to do. I love that. It's really cool. So last question for you. Do you see yourself performing live later this year in front of people, or have you already begun that since I met you?
Yeah, I have. I've been really lucky. I've had a few outdoor gigs, as that's all that's allowed here for now. I've got another one coming up in a couple of weeks. Unfortunately, a few of the festivals that I really look forward to, and I've saved the date for like 2 years, because it's been put back, I've now decided we're done, and they've closed, or they've completely gone altogether. So yeah, I've got live is the thing. I'd love to be thinking that everything will get back to whatever normal used to be, and I'm really hoping that does happen. It's just when I think of the kind of gigs that I went to in the past that have been life-affirming moments, that sort of bass in your chest, you could feel the bass drum in your rib cage and stuff. That feels so far removed from where we are right now, and I cannot wait till we get back to that moment. But until we get those experiences, I don't think it will really feel the same. It's that kind of hugging of strangers, and that I think that's why Twitter for me has kind of been a surprising meeting of people. It's not the physical aspect; it's the meeting through words, and the meeting of playlists, and you like this and I like this, and the pen friendship. I think it's a very strange thing to say that that's taken off during this time, but we can't all get together and sway at the moment. So that is our combined swaying on Twitter for now. But I can't wait till we come back properly. I really can't.
Well, I hope that it happens for you soon. And I'm kind of imagining what your ideal gig of the future is on stage, what it looks like, the people that are there and all that on the stage with you. And I hope that it comes to happen really soon. And I feel very excited because I don't get to say this often, but I will see you really soon because we have the Music Marketing Method group. I always want to, I'm talk to the nicest people on the podcast, and we stay loosely in touch, but now it's been a lot of people too. And so I clearly lose touch with many of them, but I always want to go hang with them. And so it's nice that we get to do that again. And thank you for spending time with me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for inviting me on. It's lovely to speak to you.
Of course.
I recently asked over 50 podcasters the following question. What's the number one reason that the startup of your podcast was delayed? Among the most common themes in their responses were fear, procrastination, and tech. What if I told you it doesn't have to be so hard? What if I gave you the confidence and tools you needed to start your podcast today? If you want to share expertise, dig deep into a special interest, help others, get more people to visit your blog, expand your personal brand, grow your network, then podcasting might be for you, and this course might be for you. Podcast Startup covers tech, which includes gear and software, hosting, editing, format options, marketing, and more. To learn more about this course created by yours truly and the Unstarving Musician, just go to unstarvingmusician.com/podcast startup. This episode was powered by Bandzoogle, the platform for musicians and bands to build their website and manage direct-to-fan marketing and sales. Bandzoogle features powerful design options, a commission-free store to sell music, merch, and tickets, detailed fan data, integrations with social networks, and more. Plans start at just $8.29 a month, which includes a free custom domain name. Try it at bandzoogle.com and use the promo code Robonzo, ROBONZO, to get 15% off your first year. That's bandzoogle.com, promo code Robonzo. This episode is also powered by ConvertKit. Remember the old days of collecting email addresses at the merch table with a notebook and pen? Now that notebook has gone digital, so you can promote your music everywhere and keep fans both old and new in the know. And you can do it with ConvertKit. Use landing pages designed for musicians to create an easy way to promote your next album, embed your music videos, and link out to social platforms and places to download music. Don't rent your audience, own it with an email list. Visit unstarvingmusician.com/convert to create your free account today. You'll be supporting the podcast in the process. Did you know you can help other independent artists find this podcast by subscribing on Apple Podcasts or wherever you are listening to your podcast these days? It really does help, so I hope you will consider it. The Unstarving Musician podcast is made possible through the support and generosity of listeners like you. One of the easiest ways to support the podcast, if you're a musician, is to join the Unstarving Musician community, which you can do at You guessed it, unstarvingmusician.com. In joining the community, you get tips and insights you can use in your music journey that comes not only from me and my years of experience, but also from the hundreds of other musicians that I speak to as part of the Unstarving Musician project and podcast. Plus, you'll get a free copy of my Unstarving Musician's Guide to Getting Paid Gigs ebook, the official version, and that's all for free just for being part of the community. You can learn about other ways of offering support by visiting the Unstarving Musician crowd sponsor page at unstarvingmusician.com/crowd sponsor. And if you have feedback, please go to unstarvingmusician.com to get all my contact info. You can text me, call me, email me, leave a voice message right there on that page. Just go down to the bottom of the page and you'll find everything you need to know. I really would love to hear any of your comments, suggestions, questions, whatever you've got. And you can find links to just about everything talked about in this episode at unstarvingmusician.com/podcast. All right, I'm peacing out. Thank you for listening and sharing with your musician friends and fellow indie music fans. Peace, gratitude, and a whole lot of love.